Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny.
And I'm Matt, and we have a guest here today, Brian Saliba.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back on. Glad to see you.
Sure. So this is our promised part 2 of Kickstarter for February 2002. February 2002, for whatever reasons, the stars were aligned. A lot of great Kickstarters, so we just had to come back and tell you about some more projects. So, Manny, why don't you start us off? What do you got for us?
Well, before I start, let's have our guest talk about his project that has going on this month. So what's happening this month that's pretty special to you?
Yeah, well, thanks, guys, for having me on, and also just for doing this. This kind of thing gives a huge boost to indie creators, and it's most appreciated. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the creators who you're going to highlight and have done in other videos. It's massively helpful to us. So yeah, I'm Brian Saliba from Crowbar Creative, and last year, we did an OSC setting called Rackham Vale, which you guys had me on to talk about, and it was a black and white paperback, and this year we are, due to a lot of people asking us to do it, we're kickstarting a hardcover full color version of it, and with it's all up-spec'd and pretty, and it has some added content too. So the original book did well, and people seem to like it, and so this is mostly the same content with some additional stuff. Rackham Vale is a mini sandbox full of fae creatures and old-time weirdness, inspired by and featuring the art of Arthur Rackham, one of the great old-time illustrators of fantasy. And for this Kickstarter, which is live now, we are up-speccing it. We're making it hardcover and Smythe Stone binding, and 100-pound uncoated stock for the paper, and full color throughout, which is kind of the main thing. And we're also adding some new content. We were going to do one dungeon for one of the locations in the Vale, but we hit one of our stretch goals, so we're going to be doing 3 of them now. And the next stretch goal is a half a dozen magic items unique to Rackham Vale. So we're excited to get it out and get it in people's hands, and just very appreciative of all of the support and people asking us to do it. So we're looking forward to getting it done.
Yeah,
excellent.
Wow, that's really exciting, because I was really excited by that project, and I'm excited to see it in color, as it deserves to be. That's
Indeed. I'll put a link to the interview that we did below, as well as the link to that Kickstarter below as well. Let's continue forward. My first pick is Dungeon Crawl Classics 100. Music of the Spheres is Chaos. Obviously, from the title, this is their 100th module. Congratulations, Dungeon Crawl Classics. What makes this module special is that it has 4 spinning submaps, four circles in a map to spin and change the layout of your dungeon, and changes the entire adventure. It's the story is pretty strange, as all their modules are. These philosopher kings hid all their treasure into this mountain, and no one's ever heard of them since. So you're exploring to find this out. But it's just if you look at it, and I'm going to show the artwork here, it's fantastic. If you love their modules, you'll be not only entertained by this, but it's such a grand idea.
That sounds pretty impressive. I mean, you would expect Dungeon Crawl Classics to do something big for their 100th module, but this seemed pretty weird even by their standards.
Yeah, it seems very ambitious. It does. It's Harley Strode does great content. Actually, over the weekend, finished about a 2.5-year DCC campaign, wow. And we used several of his things, including the Purple Planet, and all 4 players were in tears at the end of it. So that that counts as a win for a DM. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one too. I can't confess to knowing exactly how the rotating spheres will work, but I definitely trust Harley Stroh to come up with something really interesting and fun.
So my first pick is Dungeon, Weird Fantasy Mega Dungeon Zine. So for some reason, the name doesn't have any vowels, so it's just DNGN, but I'm pretty sure that's Dungeon. So what's really interesting about this is he's set out to make a mega dungeon, and the way he's going to do it, he's going to serialize it in zines. So the first zine is going to include 10 levels of the dungeon. This is compatible with old school essentials, and it's got lots of quick and easy references. It's really well laid out. The design, he says here that he was inspired by the one-page dungeon format, if you've ever seen that online. So it's pretty clear, pretty easy to use. He lists his inspirations as weird fantasy, sword and sorcery, science fiction, post-apocalyptic. So it's got a very strong Appendix N sort of feel to it. This zine is going to be it says at least 28 pages. So it might get larger on stretch goals. I'm sure there's a lot of stress, but that's not the So you get 10 levels with maps, random tables, and room features. So all that's going to come up to 80 plus rooms to explore, filled with monsters. The art looks really terrific. It uses something called Risopt graphic printing. Now, I'm not familiar with that technique, but it does give this nice old school feel to it. It's got he says it's going to have this handmade look to it. So on the website, on the Kickstarter page, you can see lots of mock-ups, so you can see what it's going to look like. This project has been fully funded, but it's still got over 2 weeks to go, and it's pretty inexpensive. You can get a PDF for $5, and you can get the print for $15. So I think this is pretty exciting, because a lot of people claim to make mega dungeons, and there are some really big dungeons out there. None of them are, mega mathematically, but if he's putting out a serial zine where he does a bunch of levels at a time, you could eventually come up with a huge, giant dungeon, just hundreds of levels. It's pretty amazing. He said they're also modular, so they do fit together, but if you don't want to use the mega dungeon, you can always just plop them individually in your world wherever you like them. So it looks like a pretty exciting project.
Excellent. So yeah. Brian, give us another one of your recommendations.
Well, Matt already stole one of mine with Dungeon. That's one that I'm backing and I'm excited about too. Singeing Flame. I like their blog. They have a very, I think they have their thumb on the pulse of what makes old school OSR content interesting and different, and that aesthetically, but also content wise. So, but one that I want to highlight that I'm looking forward to is called Caverns of Mourning, Mourning. It's by Stephen August Finley, and it is it like Dungeon is a dungeon for OSE. Couple things that caught my eye about it. One is that it's described as whimsical, weird, dangerous dungeon. I'm kind of sold right there. Any content that can bring in whimsy and weirdness is, that's something that we really tried to do with Rackham Vale, and something that I really like when, like Gavin Norman did with Dolmenwood. I like when that element is present, and that it's not all just hardcore, Death Lord stuff. So the art looks really interesting. The other thing that I really like about at least the way it's described is that the author has made a point in prioritizing utility at the table, which is something that you know, as a DM and as a game designer, I also hold in high regard. And the fact that what that tells me is that it's not going to be overburdened with massive walls of flavor text, you know, that it's going to be to the point. It's going to be formatted in a way that you can at a glance tell what's in a room, what's interesting about it, and then you know, hierarchical organization, so that you can see this is the most important thing that stands out. If you look a little deeper, here's what you get. If you look a little deeper, here's what you get. I think that's it's hard to do. For a designer, it's much easier for us to pretend to, you know, be novelists and you know, just write paragraphs of sure. With 25-cent words and all kinds of modifiers everywhere. But it's really hard to pare that back and capture the essence of something, but also in a concise and usable way. So the fact that Stephen has prioritized that in his Kickstarter is exciting for me. It's funded. It's got 16 days to go as of today. So we'll have a couple weeks left when this video goes live, and I think, and it's hit most of its stretch goals. I think it still has one more to go, but it's one. I think it's his first, the first one that he has created. But just based upon what I've seen so far, it's I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Yeah.
All right, excellent.
Great.
Well, my next recommendation is Orc Borg, not Mork Borg, which very award-winning game. It's Orc Borg. It's a zine based on the system. Idea is very simple. You're a bunch of orcs in space, hurrying the apocalypse so you could ascend to heaven. So it's just like brutal Klingons storyline, pretty much. There's not much more to say about it. The art looks fits the theme well with the rest of the Mork Borg books. It looks a lot of fun. I can't think of a more fun, insane game than to play like orcs in space with 80s heavy metal in the background.
Oh boy.
There's your log line right there.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. So we've been talking about several products that are either compatible or made directly for Old School Essentials. And that's because we love Old School Essentials. I'm a big fan of Old School Essentials. So they are kickstarting their box sets. As you may or may not know, Old School Essentials has 2 rule books. They have the basic or the classic game, which is well, it doesn't an injustice to say that it's a clone of basic and expert D&D. It is that, but it also is much more. The game has been reorganized and cleaned up and polished, and he's taken the trouble to address some of the contradictions and ambiguities of the original rules, and he's combined both the basic and the expert set into a fantastic, well-organized book. The other book is the advanced expansion system, which is a little trickier. So what he's done is he's taken the material that appeared in advanced Dungeons and Dragons and ported it back into basic. So it's not a clone of advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It's what advanced Dungeons and Dragons features would look like if they were in line with the basic game. So it's not an advanced D&D paladin, it's a basic D&D paladin, for instance. Again, excellent book. It includes a whole lot of new classes and new races, new spells. So what's being kickstarted is their box sets. So instead of all this stuff appearing in one book, what you've got is a beautiful box set, which includes 5 slim hardcover books in the case of the classic game, including characters, magic, adventures, monsters, and treasures. And in the advanced expansion, you have 4 slim hardcover books, which are advanced character options, magic, monsters, and treasures. And I have the 1-tome books, but I love the ideas of the box sets so much that I think I'm going to buy them again, because it's just so nice to have the magic, for instance, in a single book. So when I need to look up a spell, I don't have to flip through the book to find it. I can just pick up the magic book. So, they've also taken the opportunity to add some new art, including, and this is great, on the basic box set, they've got Earl Otis to design a cover for them. And it is beautiful and classic, and you should really, really check it out. This is actually going live the day after we're filming, and I just can't wait to see it. You should really check it out if you have any interest in the OSR or just the history of D&D, or even just a different way of playing.
Yeah, it's such a tight, clean rendering of that system. It's organized well. It's so easily adapted to almost anything else. I mean, it's got Ascending Armor Class and THAC0 together. So it's no matter what system you're used to using OSE, converting to OSE is very simple. But also, if you like the content in OSE and want to convert it to 5e or 2e or Pathfinder or whatever, also really simple. It's just I think a masterpiece of design for usability and tight and clean. Also, the production quality for all of their stuff is really good. It's always very good, and I'm with you. I can't wait till it launches.
Yeah.
And I think day one backers get like a T-shirt from Necrotic Gnome too. So yeah.
I wasn't going to mention that because by the time the video goes out, it's going to be too late for you guys. Sorry.
Right. But you and I, Matt, are going to be rocking those T-shirts for sure.
But I'm going to have a T-shirt.
Well, Brian, you go again. Anything else you recommend?
Yeah. So another one, OSE is published by Exalted Funeral, and another one that I really like that is also Exalted Funeral is called Rayguns and Robuts, specifically robots. Robuts, not robots. Robuts, because it draws very heavily on the tradition of old time pulp fiction, pulp science fiction, and also old time radio. And I'm a big fan of that stuff, X-1 and Dimension X and all of those old radio shows about science, weird science fiction from the 40s and 50s. That's where this game is drawn from. It's a game. It is an RPG, so it has its own mechanics, but the art looks really fun. It's by Levi Combs, and art looks great. He clearly is very steeped in this tradition of old time pulp science fiction, where atomics were kind of coming but not really here yet, and everybody was scared of them, and radiation was very poorly understood, and other planets and weren't very well understood. Robots were becoming a thing, and everybody was scared of those, and it looks like it's going to be just a blast to play. I can't wait to get a hold of that one.
All right.
And that one is funding is closed, but I believe the Kickstarter, the backer kit is still open.
Excellent.
So people can jump in and grab a copy. And if that's not true, then it'll be on Exalted Funeral and people can grab it there.
Excellent. Yeah, misunderstood science is so much fun.
So much fun. Yeah, I mean the X-rays were a thing, and nobody really understood how they worked very well. At least certainly not in the public sphere, and so it was just ripe for creators, fiction writers, and radio script writers, was just right. You know, they had all these new sciencey terms, and there wasn't a whole lot of information available for what those things, what they were and how they worked, which is great when you're a writer. You know, you can just take that and say, here's what X-rays do, and they melt your face off. And
that's great.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, our final recommendation is Cthulhu Awakens by Green Ronin Publishing. So their gaming system is something I've sort of followed for some time. The first time I've heard about their internal system that they use for their games, it was by when Will Wheaton was still doing game reviews and stuff like that. He was doing a game called Titan's Grave. Hopefully I remember that correctly. And he was using this system, and I thought that was pretty fascinating, hearing how he's using it and how he's incorporating it to his game. And this company has also done the Expanse role-playing game, which is very well known and highly regarded. Any fans of Dragon Age knows that they're the ones to create that system as well. So they decided to delve into Cthulhu, which is interesting. And I think one of the things I like about it, besides the fact that the art's fantastic, is that this expands a whole century. They call it the Weird Century, 1920 to 2020. So it's broad enough so that you can have any adventure during that time, or maybe you can have a series of adventures with you, maybe your descendants, or and try to fulfill your story. So yeah, this is very intriguing.
So when you as a player character go mad from all of the horrors you've seen, then your son can take over and try and avenge you, I guess. I think
you can be both the crazy uncle that sends the book to the hapless nephew and the hapless nephew.
I think Green Ronin's a really interesting company to tackle Lovecraft's stuff, because Lovecraft's world and he himself were very notoriously not socially conscious. And Green Ronin is one of the more socially conscious and responsible publishers out there. So I'm really interested. I mean, they make it a point to be very inclusive and sensitive, and promote sensitivity and tolerance and inclusion at the table. And so I'm interested to see. I think they're a great publisher to take this on, and to some extent rehabilitate the image of Cthulhu and some of the stigma that Lovecraft wrote into it, and I'm sure they'll do a really good job with it.
Yeah, I enjoy how different games have tackled the Cthulhu mythos, and so I'm really curious how Green Ronin is gonna do their own twist to it. Well,
there you are, a whole nother batch of Kickstarters for you to throw money at in February. So thank you very much to our guest today. And thank you to you for watching, and tune in next month. We'll have more exciting projects.
Indeed. Take care, everyone.